get asked so often by clients and peers and friends what they can do to help manage their anxiety. And as someone who has anxiety themselves, thank you 2020, I have done a lot of work over the last 3 to 4 years to help keep my anxiety at a baseline of 0 most of the time, which is how I prefer my anxiety. I prefer it to not exist. So today I'm going to share with you the easiest place to start with making changes in your lifestyle to help manage anxiety, and that is with my Herbal Anxiety Toolkit. And I'm going to split them up between things that we should take every day and then things that we can take when we are in it. And I'm also going to talk a little bit about how this fits into the larger mandala of our self-care. Hey, my name is Kristen and I'm an herbalist, and I am here to help you learn how to use herbs to feel good in your body. Now, before we dive in, I do want to mention that all of the tools that we're talking about today are safe to use with SSRIs, which are the most common anti-anxiety medications. However, you always want to make sure that you do your personal research with any other medications that you are on, maybe even consult your doctor if you're really concerned about it, to ensure that there are no interactions with whatever you are on and whatever herbs you might be bringing into your body. When I talk about anxiety, I'm really referring to its more extreme forms as a mental health disorder. But all the tools that I'm going to talk about today can also be helpful for times of excessive stress and times of a lot of overwhelm. Anxiety often overlaps with other mental health issues like depression, OCD, PTSD, and it can manifest physically and mentally, significantly interfering with the ability to move through our daily life. And symptoms can include things like intrusive thoughts, excessive worry and rumination, hypervigilance and sensitivity to stimuli, maybe some sleep disturbances, maybe some physical symptoms like heart palpitations and trembling and sweaty palms and feet, a lowered appetite. A lot of us have experienced some form of anxiety, but when it becomes overwhelming, it's really, really important to have tools that help us manage it, especially at its worst. And for that, I got you. Now, the first thing that we want to consider is creating a good foundation of wellness, which of course is going to probably involve our general wellness practices like good movement, good rest practices, getting good nourishment, having a good mindset, and supporting our nervous system and managing stress, maybe even doing some work to restore the nervous system and tone the vagus nerve. But there are some more specific things that we can do for general anti-anxiety support and first aid anxiety care that makes those bigger lifestyle changes a little bit easier to access because they tone down our anxiety levels so that we have more space to actually create larger lifestyle change. And before we get into the herbs, let's talk about some nutritional supplements. First, we have magnesium. Now, magnesium has a ton of functions in the body, and it is crucial for mood regulation because it influences the activity of neurotransmitters like serotonin and dopamine, and it helps modulate the body's response to stress by regulating the production of cortisol. It is also essential for the functioning of GABA, which is a really important anti-anxiety neurotransmitter that promotes relaxation and reduces electrical activity in the brain. Magnesium also improves sleep, which is really important for people with stress and anxiety because deep sleep is crucial for the healing of the body mentally and physically, and it impacts the stress cycle during the day. And it's really hard to manage anxiety if we aren't sleeping well, and it becomes quite a downward spiral. But not all magnesium is the same. There are different types of magnesium, and they have slightly different effects in the body. For anxiety specifically, you want to lean towards magnesium glycinate. Sometimes magnesium in general can cause loose stools, especially magnesium citrate, which is going to be the most common form of magnesium that you are likely to come across. But magnesium glycinate does not usually have a stool loosening effect. So I suggest starting to work with about 300 to 600 milligrams a day and just see how that goes for you. And again, it doesn't usually result in a laxative effect, but if it does for you for some reason, just ease back and then build up as those effects go away. And if you want, you can pair it with something like a magnesium complex so that you're getting other forms of magnesium in the body as well. And what's cool about magnesium is that most people notice a pretty big difference pretty immediately within a day or two, that their sleep is better and maybe their inflammation is a little bit lower and that their stress levels have gone down a little bit. So it's one that you can get pretty quick results from. Our next vitamin that we want to introduce is one that most people are deficient in, and that is vitamin D. And vitamin D is a really crucial vitamin for the immune system, for inflammation, and for mood issues. Now, we do make vitamin D when we are exposed to the sun, but spending too much time in the sun does come with a risk of developing melanoma, which is skin cancer. And most people just don't actually have the luxury of managing their sun exposure to improve their vitamin D levels. But fortunately, it's really easy to supplement with vitamin D and to get your levels up. And usually for less than like $20, you can get a year's supply of your vitamin D. And because it is fat soluble, you don't need to take it every day. So if you forget to take it one day, it's okay. You can just take double or just keep taking it a few days later, and it's still going to help to keep your vitamin D levels up. So where do you want your vitamin D levels? It's going to depend on a couple of different factors. A lot of sources are going to say something like 30 to 50 nanograms per milliliter, but I noticed that most of my clients feel subjectively better when they're a little bit higher, like closer to 60 to 80 nanograms per milliliter. And then sometimes people with autoimmune issues and a lot of chronic health problems even feel a little bit better with higher vitamin D levels. If your vitamin D levels are very low, or you think that they're probably very low, you can very easily improve them by supplementing with 10 to 20,000 IUs of vitamin D per day for a week or two, and then tapering back to about 5,000 IUs per day to keep them up. Really, the only way to know what your vitamin D levels are going to be to test your blood. And then, of course, most people only get their labs done about once a year, and so it can be a little bit hard to be measuring their vitamin D levels on a regular basis to make sure that they're baseline. It's really unlikely that you're going to overdose on vitamin D. It is possible, but statistically, you are more likely to be deficient than you are to overdose on vitamin D. I would just say get your vitamin D in. Now, it is possible that anxiety and depression symptoms are actually a symptom of vitamin D deficiency, and once people get their vitamin D levels up, those mental health issues go away. But that's only if your mental health issues are caused by a vitamin D deficiency. Either way, it's probably going to be really helpful for you to increase your vitamin D levels to make sure that we have a really nice, healthy foundation for our mental health. Plus, vitamin D is responsible for so many other aspects of our wellness and health as well, so getting them up is always going to be a good idea. And now, of course, we have one more really important nutrient in the tonic supplement category before we get to some of the actual herbs that I would suggest, and that is fish oil. Now, when I first developed an anxiety disorder, it felt like I was hit by an anxiety train. 1 minute I was fine. And by fine, like I was going through some stuff. So it's not like a surprise that I developed anxiety. It was 2020. There was a really bad breakup. It was a very stressful time. But 1 minute I was like fine. And then the next I was having constant panic attacks and anxiety attacks, and they would last for weeks. And I had no idea what was going on or why it was happening. And after about 3 weeks of near constant terror, I actually just decided to get medical help. I was having a literal mental breakdown. And yeah, I was nervous to take medication because I'm an herbalist. I do things naturally. But what else was I going to do? I was having like a mental health emergency. So fortunately, it was absolutely life-saving. It completely transformed my quality of life at the time. I was able to stop having panic attacks pretty immediately. But of course, if I'm going to do something like take a medication and improve my life, I am going to do things right. So I did a bunch of research on improving medication outcomes. And something fascinating I found was that high doses of fish oil not only improve the efficacy of SSRIs in major depressive disorder, specifically Prozac in the case of this one double-blind study, but fish oil can be just as effective as a standalone intervention for depression. Now, I wasn't dealing with depression and I wasn't taking Prozac. I was taking escitalopram, aka Lexapro, but depression and anxiety are really closely related and they're both treated with SSRIs. So I was like, well, anxiety is probably one of the worst things I've ever experienced, so I am just going to throw everything that I can at it. And I noticed a significant difference and improvement. In fact, according to this study, taking just fluoxetine showed a 51% improvement in depressive symptoms, and just taking EPA alone improved symptoms by 56%. And the combination of EPA and fluoxetine improved symptoms by 81%. And those are really good numbers. And this is for major depressive disorder, which can be really hard to treat. And it's likely because omega-3s have a strong anti-inflammatory mechanisms, which can soothe inflammation in the gut where 90% of serotonin is found, and a healthier gut is going to equal a healthier mind. So if you are on SSRIs, absolutely be taking fish oil. And if you are doing all right and you're on the fence about taking medication, try fish oil as a standalone intervention. Of course, I do suggest doing this under the guidance of a doctor because we love to have medical monitoring. We love to know that there's backup support as we're trying to do things naturally in case things don't go well and we need extra help. So I really hope that you do have a good and compassionate and collaborative healthcare provider on your side while you're trying to improve your wellness. Now, to get those depression and anxiety lifting effects, you do need a lot of fish oil, aiming for either 3.0 grams of EPA or 1.5 grams of DHA per day. Now, this is a lot of fish oil. It's usually going to be double or triple the amount that is on the actual container of whatever supplement you're taking. But especially if you are just going to be taking fish oil, you probably want a higher dose at least to start. So those are some of the nutrients that you want to consider. You can, of course, get them in your diet, but if you are struggling with anxiety, it can be pretty debilitating and crippling at times. So it's probably just easier to take a capsule, at least to start. So go ahead and put that in your back pocket. But then for tonic care, we also have 2 herbs that I would suggest working with, again, to create a good ecosystem of wellness for your anxiety journey. And those are going to be Skullcap and oats. So Skullcap has really grown into one of my favorite anti-anxiety herbs. I even just got a message from a student a couple of days ago that Skullcap is one of the only things that is really helping her for anxiety. And I'm not going to go too deeply into it because I actually have a whole episode on Skullcap, which I'm going to add to this description. But it's a tonic herb in the mint family, and it's like putting on an anti-thinking cap. It's an antispasmodic nervine that also has very slight sedative properties, and it's really good for people who are just so frazzled that they feel like they're about to snap. People who are really sensitive to any stimulation, especially during stress, like every single thought is going to send them into an anxiety spiral. And it's also great for people who have a lot of neck pain and nervousness and insomnia and stress headaches. So if your stress and anxiety really show up in the body as well as in the mind, this is a great herbal tonic for you. Now, it is a little bit bitter, so we don't really drink it as a tea too much, or else you're not likely to take it, but really you want it as a fresh, flowering herbal tincture. The tea itself is more sedative, while the fresh tincture is going to be more toning to the nervous system. It's going to be an herb that helps to build resilience, tone the nervous system, and decrease the effects of stress. And I like to think of it as calming the mind, similar to how it feels to have a regular meditation practice. So when you take the herb every day, I like to think of it as meditation in a bottle, because it allows us to sort of be a little bit more in control of our mind and our mental process, and to stop the rumination cycle and to switch our thoughts when we're having negative thinking. Again, definitely check out the full episode on Skullcap in the description to learn how to grow it and how to use it and to get the best effects from it. But it's a great one to add in to your everyday tonic anti-anxiety care. Okay, so we have a few supplements you can take every day. We have a tincture that you can do in the morning and in the evening. And now we need an herbal tea that you can drink throughout your day. Because if you can drink an herbal tea, that gesture goes a really long way. And it's a very good sign that you are committed to your healing journey, since it is slightly more time consuming than just popping a pill or taking a tincture. And it requires us to slow down during our day a little bit. And when we drink a tea, we are in relationship with the energy of a plant that we don't really get with tinctures or capsules. It's incredibly supportive and soothing to like the deep spirit of ourselves as biological creatures. And it is one of the deeper medicines that we can find in an herbalism practice. Now, if you have watched my episode on herbal teas to drink every day, you will know that there is a concept of nourishing tonics and how there are herbs that not only provide a broad spectrum of vitamins and minerals to the body, but also have a special affinity for different systems in the body. And for our nervous system, we have the oat plant, Avena sativa. It's a nervine, it's a tonic, it's a nutritive herb that relaxes and calms the nervous system, and it is a foundational anti-anxiety herb that is really good for restoring a deep sense of calm so that you can work on your anxiety issues in a larger way. It's particularly beneficial for when you are burnt out, overwhelmed, and feel really frazzled, like when everything in the body is just like buzzing all the time. It is high in magnesium, iron, phosphorus, and selenium, and it is considered to be a tropho-restorative, which is an herb or food for a specific organ system. And in this case, that system obviously is going to be the nervous system. To work with Oatstraw, you can either do fresh milky oats tincture or a daily Oatstraw infusion. The milky oats tincture is going to be really great for like deep, slow nervous system restoration. And if you're thinking about transitioning onto or off of mental health medication, definitely add in a milky oats tincture to just bolster the nervous system and support resilience and support that transition. But I also suggest a daily Oatstraw tea. And I recommend to do an overnight infusion with this herb. So you want to add 4 teaspoons of Oatstraw to a large mason jar, topping it off with 4 cups of hot water, letting it sit overnight, and then straining it in the morning and drinking it throughout the day. Of course, you can add a little bit of milk, you can add a little bit of honey or sweetener of choice, whatever is going to increase the likelihood that you are going to drink this. That's what I want you to do. And sometimes I will actually add a little pinch of linden or a pinch of passion flower to that if I'm feeling extra frazzled, but it's a lovely herb just on its own, and it makes a noticeable difference in the nervous system. It would be like if you could put a weighted blanket on all of your nerves and wear it throughout the day. Okay, so this episode is getting kind of long. I do think it's going to be a little bit hard to edit, so we're going to pause here, and in our next episode, we're going to cover the first aid herbs, the things that we can work with to get us out of an anxiety spiral. And if you want to skip ahead, make sure that you get that information ASAP because you need it now. I did make a handy PDF guide that you can download from the link in the description. It's going to cover all of the tonic herbs and supplements, how to use them, how much to use them. It's going to cover the first aid herbs. It's going to give you resources and suggestions for what products to use or where to get the herbs and a whole bunch more. So if you want that, make sure that you get it now. And if you are finding this helpful, be sure to like and subscribe so that you don't miss out on part 2. All right. I think that's it for me. Okay. I love you. Bye.